Hello and welcome to Salem Voices. I'm Lucy Rose, your host, and I am so excited to introduce you today to our special guest from the Salem College class of 2007, Sarah Hilden. Sarah double majored. Hi, Sarah. How are you?
Hi. Good. Thanks.
And I can't wait to tell you where she's sitting as we're waving to each other, but she double majored in international relations and economics. And she joined us today from one of my favorite places in the world, Kigali, Rwanda. By the unbelievable magic of IT, Sarah is joining us from Rwanda, where she lives with her husband, two children, and as she says, her very nervous dog, Pickles. So maybe Pickles will make it, come make it a presentation today. We can see him. No, but welcome, Sarah. We're just so glad to have you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, me too. What a pleasure. All right, let's just dive in. Clearly, you're used to diving in, I think, based on your life experiences. Oh my gosh. Not too long ago, or maybe it seems, or maybe not, you were a senior at Salem. You've clearly made some amazing, really amazing, guys, personal and professional decisions since then, including graduate work and living literally all over the world. Wow, is all I got to say. So fill us in on your journey to date, if you will. How'd you get from being a Salem senior to where you are today? And heavens, what have you done along the way?
I think I've had a fairly sort of non-linear career path, I guess, since Salem College, which I actually really credit Salem with having given me that kind of opportunity and the willingness to kind of explore those kinds of opportunities. But when I graduated from Salem, I had a degree in international relations, and I was really interested in democratization in the world. And so I went to graduate school to study Russian and Eurasian politics. And I was just dead set on working for the embassy. So midway through graduate school, I had the opportunity to kind of test the waters there. Discovered it's a great career path for many people. It wasn't going to be the one for me. So I needed to kind of rethink the plans that I had made back in like 7th grade.
That just underscores the value of internships, right, Sarah?
Absolutely. That's right. So yeah, midway through graduate school, I was like, oh, I gotta come up with a new plan. And I knew I wanted to get into more sort of direct service work. So I switched to nonprofits. I moved to the Mississippi Delta, rural Mississippi, and took a job with a nonprofit that was basically like a civil rights based educational program. And yeah, spent 2 years there and learned some more important lessons, including that I'm not really cut out to be a teacher, although I really loved the work that I got to do with that program. So I'd also gotten married along the way. And my husband and I decided to start looking for jobs overseas, and we found One Acre Fund. So we moved to Kenya. I started as kind of a generalist. I got the opportunity to it was a startup back then. So I got the opportunity to just work on some pretty cool projects. I did some livestock interventions. I helped set up a solar program to bring light to some off-grid homes in rural Kenya. And then after about a year, the program was growing really quickly. And so we were going to launch a new country program in Tanzania. And so I and two other employees moved to Tanzania to launch the program there. I spent about 4 years in Tanzania, and then shifted into supply chain work and came to Rwanda after I had my first child, actually. And then I've been in Rwanda working on supply chain, again with One Acre Fund. But yeah, that's how I ended up here.
Okay, guys, I'm just hoping everybody really is listening to what she just said. And we're going to come back and pick up on a lot of those things. I want to hear about the different places you've been. We want to talk a lot about the One Acre Fund and what that's doing. And the impact that you're making with the One Acre Fund. I also heard the term startup, which gets my little brain kind of going here, and one of the employees. But before we move to where you are today, kind of in that path with One Acre, let's revisit just a second. You also mentioned the Mississippi Delta. And yeah, you may have learned that teaching is not for you while you're doing that, but my guess is you actually learned a lot of other things. So what would you say your kind of most important learnings and takeaways were from that experience?
Yeah, that was a really critical part of the of sort of my career path, actually. So I moved there, and it happened to be just kind of a unique time in that program's history. They were just having some struggles and needed like a new investment of some capital, and then new energy, and ultimately just some administration. And so I learned something important, which is that I could contribute in a way that wasn't sort of like the direct program, I guess. So I sort of helped on the back end to set up a foundation for that program.
Okay.
Which was really cool. But it was also meaningful. This is going to speak a little bit just to the privilege of being a white woman in America, but I moved to the Mississippi Delta very green, just with sort of no idea what kind of opportunities, I had always taken for granted. So in that part of the country, like the schools are still completely segregated. My introduction to the town was somebody driving me around and saying like, oh, well, this neighborhood is mixed. And just like, it was a part of America I didn't know existed.
Right.
And I was
Right.
really, again, like that's a privilege that I certainly had and just wasn't aware of, but it really helped just invest in me, like a commitment to social justice, sort of having that opportunity to see, where people are not getting really a fair shake in the country. And yeah, so that was something that was really meaningful to me, was that I knew I wanted to be just committed to social justice initiatives.
Wow. So that shaped the rest of your professional commitment so far.
Yeah.
And personal commitment, obviously,
Yeah,
from then to
definitely.
today,
Yeah.
in a
Yeah, absolutely.
meaningful way. What impact, when you were there, and what was the foundation? Was there a name for the
Oh
foundation?
yeah, sorry, I should plug them. It's amazing. It's called the Sunflower County Freedom Project.
Lovely.
So it's a supplemental education program that's based in the context of the civil rights movement. In the 1960s, there were these like freedom schools that existed to help teach like how to register to vote and how to, all kinds of things. And so, it was sort of in the context of that. And what we did was offer basically, supplemental education to the public schools. So we taught math and novel studies, and I taught Swahili, which was sort of silly, but.
Now, one thing I might have understood based on your graduate degree in Russian politics or policy, but Swahili, well done.
Yeah, just an intro class, just to be clear. But
every night, the night before the class, you went over and over and over what you were going to teach the next day.
So I studied a little bit of Swahili along with my Russian studies, because I started dating a boy who I'm now married to, but who was an African studies guy, and was like, you're gonna love this. It's so much more straightforward than Russian. So,
oh my God.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Good for you, but also no wonder you decided teaching might not be for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was birth by fire, right? All right. So,
exactly. Yeah.
Well, clearly, obviously, that helped shape the rest of your life, that experience. So you're committed to making a difference now in the lives of people in great need. We know now where the passion came from, but you made a decision to switch, and now you focus on agriculture and food security, both for probably the same kinds of reasons that you learned and found your passion about in Mississippi. But tell us kind of what made you decide to do that. How did you make that transition from teaching in the Mississippi Delta to doing agriculture and food security for One Acre Fund?
So being in Mississippi was interesting because it was the first time I was a part of, there's like a term for this, it's called like a food desert. It's so rural. I mean, I lived in a town of 10,000, the program was in a town of like 800 or something. We were just surrounded by farms, and yet like access to food was really limited, actually, which was a very surprising thing. But that's like the more sort of interesting interview answer. But the truth is that we were looking for opportunities, and this was the one that came up. And so we jumped at it, which
not taking credit for being, really looking laser focused for this particular job, but
we wanted to get overseas. We wanted to do something in social justice. We were interested in startups. So this was just fit perfectly.
Okay. So it wasn't a proactive decision to do agriculture and food security per se.
Not exactly. I think there's so many ways to spin what One Acre Fund is. You can think of it as women's empowerment, as food security, as an investment in agriculture, as, sort of Africa focus. Like, I think there's a lot of different functions that could satisfy a lot of different kinds of interests.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Let's just go there.
Totally. Yeah. So One Acre Fund's a social enterprise. It started in 2006 by this guy named Andrew Yoon, which you can check out his TED Talk and stuff. But yeah, the idea is basically a lot like microfinance. So what we do is we've created what we call like our market bundle. Just it has 4 components. So we have access to financing for smallholder farmers. So we define a smallholder farmer generally as people who are farming on land that's like 1 acre or less. And from that 1 acre, they're typically feeding a family of 5 or 6.
Okay.
So it's not a lot of space. But yeah, so most of those clients need access to financing if they're going to sort of improve how they work on their land. They also need training. So a lot of farmers in this area are still using techniques that are very simplistic. So like broadcasting seed, maybe broadcasting fertilizer, probably not. And so what we do is we give them training on just fairly basic but modern agricultural techniques. And then the 2 parts that I get to help work on, we also give them access to high quality inputs. So hybrid seeds and fertilizer that we source from all over the world, and just make sure that clients can access things that are going to deliver results. And then the 4th piece of that is delivery to their doorsteps, basically. So we try to bring that inventory to within walking distance of people's homes. So yeah, so those 4 things, what we've found is that combination of that market bundle, I guess, is what really can help clients, what we like to say, like grow their way out of poverty, basically. So like they can invest in their own land and then harvest enough to not only feed themselves and their families, but usually sell some excess to in order to like send their kids to school or, build some resilience for a health shock or whatever it is. So yeah, so that's kind of the basic idea of 1 Acre Fund. And then I work on the supply chain part. So I oversee the journey of those inputs, basically from sourcing then through the last mile logistics piece.
Can you talk about the last mile just a bit? Because you hear that about food, and I also hear that about water, and access to water in that last mile. And that's often the very hardest part of the whole supply chain, isn't it? And I'd love to have you expand upon that a minute, because clearly in the importance of this work in making things, food, particularly in water, accessible to these folks to improve their lives. If you can't get it to them, it's not going, all the other work is for naught.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. We like to say it like it might as well be on the moon if it's not close enough for our clients to access easily. Yeah, so it's I think from my perspective, it's the coolest part of 1 Acre Fund. But what we do, is it's really cool, actually. So what we do is we aggregate the demand, essentially. So we work through field officers who work with anywhere from 150 northward up to like maybe 400 clients that they sort of manage. And then because we have their demand aggregated and the demand is fairly consistent, this is going to get so wonky, but like because the demand is predictable, because it depends on when the rains come, we can deliver all of the things to people at once. So it's essentially like an order catalog. People place their order, and then we can take everything they've ordered out to them, which means that we can consolidate the costs of that. Like we can rent a truck, whereas a client, right, doesn't necessarily have the means to come all the way to Kigali or Kakamega, wherever they are. So what we can do then is send out a truckload of inputs and set up basically like a pop-up market point for clients to then pick up their inventory. And we can do that at a much lower cost than what a client might be able to do independently. So it's really just taking advantage of, right, the economies of scale. So yeah, that's kind of our basic approach to delivery. We've got lots of sort of ways to kind of play on the edges of that depending on the context. But yeah, we're now working across 10 countries, 7 core countries, and with 1 million clients. So in order to kind of do that last mile piece, we send out those trucks and set up those market points about 5,000 times a year, which is pretty
5,000 times a year.
Well, 5,000 instances of those.
There may be folks, that are watching us who may not have a real feel of Rwanda, what we're talking about here, or Kenya, or many of the places, Tanzania, many of the places where you guys work, and really make a difference in the world. Can you just give kind of a visual image of what that last mile might look like when you talk about you bringing out and setting
Yeah.
up a pop-up? These villages are teeny and down
Mhm.
dirt roads and all this stuff. What might that look like for you all in terms of really making this happen?
Yeah, great question. So in Kenya and Rwanda, those are our two largest markets,
Yeah.
our mature markets, where we serve, I don't know, maybe, no, I'm going to get the number wrong, but the vast majority of our clients are in those two
Yeah.
markets. In those two, the population density is really high. So you can't drive down any road in Rwanda without seeing people. I'm not going to get the numbers right, so I won't try, but the difference is just incredible. If you think about like, it's like the density of an urban center, but in a rural setting, which I think can be very surprising to people who might be more used to like rural views in America, which are just, vast landscapes with nobody, like that's not what you see. So in Rwanda is called the land of 1,000 hills. So it's very hilly. It's like San Francisco, basically. Lucy, you might remember this from when you visited, but the hills are
Beautiful.
incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it means every view is beautiful, but it also means that every road is steep. So what we do for the most part in our warehouses are built along tarmac roads, but then the trucks that we're sending out are fairly light. They're like 10-ton trucks, because that's about what the roads can manage. So we send them out on dirt roads. And yeah, in Rwanda, that might be around very windy, steep hills. Yeah, and then we set up in a market point, so in a village generally, and because the population density is so high, that means that they're like anywhere you stop, really, you might be within 200 people's homes, even though the vista is very green and agricultural, and it's very bucolic, I guess, in its view, but has the density of an urban center, which makes our model really work well.
Well,
That's not true in all of our countries, so we have a couple of variations on this, but that's what it looks like for most of our
thank you
clients.
for sharing that. It's just to give people a view and a feel of what it's like
Definitely,
to be where you are. And I just want to take that one little step further, because obviously that's where you live, but you've moved around the world a whole lot, clearly, in your professional life and your personal life, because it impacts all of you, your whole family, including Pickles. Most people might think what you've done takes a whole lot of courage to just pick up and go and say, well, let's go overseas. And oh, by the way, let's make it Kenya or Tanzania or Rwanda. Where did you find that courage, or did it take any to you? And what does courage mean to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I feel like it might be a bit more mundane than people think. It certainly was for me a big move. I'd studied abroad while at Salem, but aside from that, I had not really lived overseas. And my first day on the job was my first day in Africa, which also just comes with an inordinate amount of privilege. But
Yes.
But yeah, it was a big move. I think the thing that is true though is like, I live in a 3-bedroom house in a suburban neighborhood. Like I think it's more mundane than people kind of imagine. With one exception, I think the thing that really takes courage is traveling between continents with a baby, because like, let me tell you, baby jet lag is the only thing that's really scary about living here.
Okay, that's honest. And I really wish, guys, when Sarah and I first saw each other today, I would say this morning, it's morning for me, it's afternoon clearly for Sarah, but she had set up outside because she wanted you all to be able to see the view from her backyard. And it's just stunning. But unfortunately, I couldn't see Sarah because the light was behind her and not in front. So she had to move inside. But it really is stunning, even right where you live. That doesn't take away the jet lag from the baby. I know that.
No, it doesn't.
Make you overcome that. So, okay, thank you. Now, you mentioned when you were at Salem, you did a study abroad.
Yeah.
My guess is you learned a whole lot about leadership while you were at Salem. Part of it may have come from that study abroad and some of the courage too, because that's so important, I think, in learning. But how did Salem prepare you to lead? If that's part of the story, that's great. If it's not, how else would you say Salem kind of has given you you need the tools to lead?
I trace basically all of my sort of professional success back to Salem. I was one of the people who attended Salem sort of in spite of it being a women's college rather than because of it being a women's college, but was basically an instant convert. It was a very small environment, which I came from my graduating class of high school was bigger than Salem. So I remember,
Yeah.
it was a huge shift for me. And I had imagined myself in high school at a bigger, research university. I don't know why, just because what do you know when you're 18? But Salem was just the most like important experience in my life. It was such a nurturing environment. I didn't think of myself as being sort of in a shell when I arrived, but like as a senior, looking back on myself as a freshman, I really had been. And I think I just loved every aspect of it. I felt challenged by my professors. I felt challenged by just the fact that it's a small school means that you're going to interact with all kinds of different disciplines and all kinds of like people, pursuing different activities, and you kind of get pushed to be a part of that. So for me, Salem was just, even though it was a small environment, and maybe because of that, it was such a broadening experience for me. And I basically have spent the rest of my life trying to replicate being surrounded by that many cool women, which is hard to do once you're not at Salem.
That's hard to do, I think, Sarah.
Yeah.
If you find that way, would you please send it my way? Okay? Or maybe we'll have you back and you can tell everybody how to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Searching, and when you find a key, please let us all know. All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that, but it kind of does bring me to an obvious extension of that, because I think we're all searching for that. And I want to come back to your friends at Salem and what that meant to you, and a whole bunch more about Salem in depth. But, I think about mentorship and kind of the importance of having other people in your life throughout your life. Have you had a good mentor through it in your life, or do you believe in mentoring, and are you doing that yourself, or is there something there that can help support you even without the giant family of Salem being right there with you all the time?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, man, yeah, in terms of like great mentors, I had two at Salem. I had Dr. P. Vance, who was the head of the International Relations Department while I was there, and then Crispin Barr, who was the dean of students, and who I worked with when I was a part of student government, and both were just incredible influences on my life. Trying to think, and then I've had mentors in my professional career as well, both at the Freedom Project and here at One Acre Fund. And I think it is really, really useful. I've been a part of formal mentorships, including here at One Acre Fund, and then more informal ones. And my sense is that the more informal, the better they are, I guess.
Oh,
I had formal relations. The two people I would call my mentors in my professional career were my bosses. So I had formal relationships with them, but I feel like I adopted them as mentors kind of without their consent. just decided what I thought was really kind of an incredible professional skill from them, and then tried to make them teach it to me. So that's my approach to mentorship, is force the issue.
But I think that it is important to try to learn as much as you can, isn't it, from anybody,
Definitely.
whether it's formal or not formal, to make sure that you understand where their strengths are, I guess, and what they know you don't know, and see if you can learn from that. So well done with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to tap your brain and wisdom and intellect in your field right now, just for a minute, before we move to a little more focused discussion about Salem, which of course.
Yeah. Me too.
I look at you and I see somebody who is going to continue to make a giant impact on our world. And I look at the health and wellness of people, and I think about Salem and where we're going with health and wellness and all of that as well. And I think about food and what you do as such a monster impact on the health of our world. And the health, of course, then predicts everything else about the world. Healthy people make good decisions and
agree,
well, and all those things. So if I look at you and I think about food security and what you're doing and trying to make that better, what would you say is the biggest issue right now in food security and in the future? And what would you, if you had a magic wand, what would you do about that?
It's climate change. I think that's the biggest issue in food security. We feel it. I think the effects of climate change are really visible along the equator. We feel it like in very obvious ways. And I think this was new to me coming from the Northern Hemisphere and from the Midwest, where, it sort of precipitates all year long. But here you have, like, your seasons are the rainy season and the dry season, and they're very predictable, or historically they've been very predictable. And when you're in a place like this where people are, relying on more basic agricultural techniques, like we don't have pivots and sprinkler systems and irrigation and that kind of thing, which means we're relying on the rain to feed the crops. And yeah, the seasons are already kind of topsy-turvy and less predictable. And if you plant your seeds and then there's a surprise, week-long dry spell or 2-week dry spell, you can damage the crops significantly. So I mean, we One Acre Fund is sort of dedicated to kind of mitigations for that. There's insurance products, there's irrigation, that kind of thing, but ultimately that's climate change that's driving that. So if I'm worried about one thing in terms of food security, it's the effect we're having on the environment. And I just think we have to address that.
Okay, I really value you sharing that. That's just, there are things clearly at the policy level that have to be done, and
Definitely.
we need to pay more attention to, and clearly at the individual level, and each of us paying attention to it as well. But what a driver. And I even, Sarah, I was reading the other day even about the leaching of the salt water into coastal areas and how that's away at potentially productive land,
Right.
that, and all the things that's going to cause as it leaches in as the seas rise, all these things that are really going to do that will impact the health of the future. So paying attention to climate change and what we can do about it, clearly vital. Thank you.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. It's amazing because I think, whenever I think about it, what we can do as One Acre Fund, and we have a million clients, so we feel like we can have a big impact, but it does ultimately feel like mitigations to me. And it feels like the right thing to do is collective action from our leaders, like is policy action that's going to really drive the biggest amount of change. But I agree. I think it's a really important.
Thank you for what you're trying to do about global health, by providing food for all, as best you can. Thank you. So let's move to Salem. You've brought it up several times, and you've brought up student government. I think you were rather involved in student government, if I remember correct. What role did you play in student government at Salem?
So at my senior year, I was the president, which was a huge honor. I am still super proud of that. And prior to that, I'd been involved in all the sort of little committees, like the, I can't even remember what they're called, but like the academic advisory committee, and I don't know,
there were a lot of
code one. Those like the little ones, I guess. But my senior year, I got an elected office, which is really exciting.
Great. We're going to come back to that then, because I want to talk about leadership again, and how being able to be involved like that at that level really probably helped shape you too. But first, and I'm doing this with everybody, so let's just have a little bit of fun. We're just going to do like one word rapid fires, and it just brings back your memories, I hope, to get us going.
I love it.
So what was your favorite course?
Modern International Relations with Dr.
Modern
Bubans.
International Relations. Okay.
Freshman year. Yeah.
Freshman year. Wow. Okay. So you started early falling in love with Salem then. All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
What faculty member had the greatest impact on you? And you may have already said it.
Dr. Bubans for sure. He was a huge impact, but I would say everyone in that department. Dr. Kloss was also amazing. I mean, there were so many great professors. Dr. Stolman, I should name them all. Yeah,
it would be lovely. We'll make sure they see this. And so shout outs anytime, you just go right ahead and do it. And we'll make sure they see and hear you say that. So that's wonderful. Okay. So what was your favorite tradition? You obviously were very involved. So which one of those was your favorite?
That's such a good question. I think my favorite was I loved the Christmas time at Salem. I really loved the candlelight service when everyone was in Haynes Auditorium with the candles. I remember that feeling like the most sort of magical time at Salem.
It was beautiful and magical that we actually used real flames, real candles.
I love that.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. And just when they glow it is beautiful. Oh my. Okay. So too bad we can't go do that right now, I think, or something.
I know. Yeah.
Okay. So if in fact you really did need to get away, and I know you were quite busy as student government president, there might've been moments that you really did need to go study too.
Oh yeah.
Run the school. Where might somebody find you? Where's your favorite place to hide?
Oh man, I spent most of my time in my dorm room with my roommate who I was with all 4 years and loved. But Maybe the rat, actually. I like to study in the refectory.
Oh, you like to study in the refectory.
It's like a little bit noisy, but there were snacks to go with your books.
Absolutely. Very good. And I love the snacks part. My favorite was I was a big Diet Coke-aholic, even back in college. And we had fountain drinks and you could just walk in anytime
Yes,
and get a refill.
anytime.
I just love that. I don't know if they still do it. And if I were still there, they'd have to stop doing it because I'm sure I would make them go broke just for my fountain drinks. But okay, thank you. All right. Looking back, SGA president involved in all of that, did a study abroad. Well, how would you say, what came together for you that really helped you prepare for your work success and your success in life at Salem? What kind of tangible things? What did you learn from?
Yeah. So I think what I liked best about Salem was that I put this in a recruitment letter once, but it's really sincere, like that Salem kind of prepares you for like a world of possibilities. I felt like I learned so many soft skills at university, and since I think more of us study things that we don't end up using directly anyway, the lessons from the classes are really important, but what you learn about persuasion and negotiation and public service, we all had to do volunteer hours and leadership and being at the front of the room and like working with a broad variety of people. I think those were the things that I learned most at Salem. I learned how to be a good collaborator and a good negotiator, and I learned how to stand up straight in any room. And I feel like those are the really, I guess those are kind of intangibles, but those are the things that I think prepared me for a career and for success outside of Salem.
They're intangibles, but they're just, they are totally necessities for giving you that confidence and the courage to do the things that you have done, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Let's think about women's colleges. Do you think going to a women's college, and a small one at that, really was a part of that for you, that enabled you to have those experiences?
Yes, absolutely. I went as part of student government. Right before I started my senior year, Salem sent me to a conference, a student government conference, and there were other women there, but we were very few in the room. And like the vast majority of SGA leadership in universities across America are still men. And I think that's of course you can kind of overcome that in other scenarios, but I think that the default at a women's college, where in every club the leaders are going to be women, in every organization it's going to be women, and every opportunity to give speeches it's going to be women. Like I think that just it changes. It's subconscious when you go into it, because I certainly didn't think I was being held back in my co-ed high school, but once I was at Salem, I think that kind of like just nurturing environment and an environment that put the expectation that women are at the front of the room, and the entire mathematics department is women. Like it's a different set of assumptions that you then sort of go off into the world with, and I think that's actually really important.
Well, it certainly sounds like I don't even need to ask this question, but if you were to do it over, it sounds like you do exactly the same thing. And
I would do exactly the same thing. Yeah, I've tried to push so many people toward women's colleges since then. I'm a total convert. I really strongly believe in single sex education, actually.
Okay. Well, when we do this again one day, we'll deeper dive into that.
Yeah.
We had so much more time, but we've already shared kind of these feelings. But I'm going to give you just open one more door here. I call it the secret sauce or whatever. And I'm not exactly sure even what I mean when I say that, but maybe you can figure it out. But, when you think about Salem and you get that warm, fuzzy feel inside, which you do, because I can already see that in your eyes, you stay, your eyes get bright. What is it that you're thinking about? What is it that causes you to want to tell everybody you got to go to Salem because it's really special? What's really special about it to you?
Yeah, it's the community. I think that's the intangible bit, right? Like I think the quality of education is fantastic, but you can get that elsewhere. The campus is absolutely gorgeous, but you can technically get that elsewhere. But I think it's the what's that? The gestalt. It's like the sum is greater than, or the sum is greater it's greater than the sum of its parts. That's what it is. But I think for me, it ultimately was the community. There's a broad diversity of women from all over the world, all different kinds of interests, all different kinds of backgrounds. And I think getting to be close with that great of a diversity is just is the secret sauce. I think, for me, it was the community.
The community. And let's just build on that, because you obviously made a lot of friends there. A whole lot.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Do you still keep in touch with them? And if so, what does that community mean to you now? You said you're constantly searching to try to find one where you are.
Just more cool women. That's all I want. Yeah.
Do you still keep in touch with those women, and how important is that to you?
Yeah, definitely. I will say that I'm a terrible correspondent just in general, but yeah, those women are so important to me even still. I think, it's like a real sisterhood. I think more than a friendship. When you're sisters, you can never really stop being sisters, I guess. And so, I think even when time goes by, when we find each other and see each other, we get to pick up just where it left off. But yeah, I've had one Salem sister come visit me here. We climbed a volcano together, which she might still resent me for, but it was really cool.
I love that. Did you use machetes like you do when you go see the gorillas and things like that, or were you able to walk on a path?
We walked on a path, but yeah, we were in the DRC, actually, just over the border from Rwanda. It was pretty exciting.
Oh, I'm so happy that somebody came to visit you there, but that you still stay in touch with your friends, and that
definitely
that's meaningful to you. Because the other thing I find is, you talked about the sisterhood and today the siblinghood, whatever. But
the siblinghood, yeah.
I look at this and I go, you and I are already BFFs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I love it.
We're a generation apart, maybe 2 generations apart. We're a long way apart, but you never know it. I mean, we first started talking and you would have thought we grew up together. Just
I totally agree.
Salem connections.
Yeah. I've never met a Salem sister that I haven't instantly had that connection with. Yeah. I mean, even like sort of Salem tangents, like I've been wearing a Salem sweatshirt and had people stop me and be like, oh, my sister went to Salem, like my aunt went to Salem, and get very excited. I feel like it's that, like we were saying, that's the secret sauce. It's such a strong community.
Thank you. Okay, as we begin to kind of end our conversation together, I want to give you a chance to speak to those students that are still there, to our young alums who've recently graduated. That question about what letter would you write now to your 20-year-old self, and what you now know, okay? Mm-hmm. What would you tell yourself at Salem or shortly thereafter or whatever, and how to use that time in your life? What would that look like?
Yeah, I actually have such a good answer for this, because I got the advice. So when my dad dropped me off at Salem, during my freshman year, this might not be advice for everybody, but it was good advice for me, who's a little too serious and a little too studious. He told me, Sarah, don't let your studies interfere with your college education. Which was great advice, actually, because I was the type who would have just been, only academically focused and only worried about getting good grades and that kind of thing. And I got so much out of residence life, study abroad, student government, all of the clubs, like just, by investing in the rest of the community, as well as my studies. So I guess caveat to that advice is you should still get good grades.
But take full advantage of
everything. Take full advantage of it. Yeah. I had so many opportunities at Salem, and I think the more you can just jump into them and experience all of that, I think that's the way to get the full advantage of Salem.
Great advice. Thank you. Okay.
Well, thanks, Dad. I guess.
Time to end. Thank you. I mean, really, thank you. But you've got the last word. So if you will, just, look right at me and share whatever you want this to end on, whatever you think is the most important takeaway you'd like to share with folks as we end our interview and time together.
Oh yeah, this is a hard question. It feels high pressure. I was thinking about how to end. And do you remember that graduation speech that like garnered a lot of praise? I think in the 90s, it was like, wear sunscreen. I feel like it's the same kind of advice now, just wear masks and wash your hands. And that's, I think, the only thing to end on these days is,
Take care of yourself and
take
others.
care of yourself and others. Yeah, exactly.
And with that, what a beautiful way to end. Take care of yourself and others. And I just want to thank you really on behalf of all of us, all of the whole Salem community. I
Oh,
thank
this
you
is
for
such a
sharing
pleasure.
your story. Oh, thank you. Sharing
Thanks.
your story, the impact you're making in the world and will continue to make, I'm quite sure, because of your commitment to doing such wonderful work for so many people. You just make us proud. And
Oh,
I'm
thank
really
you.
proud to be your Salem sister. Thank you. And
Oh.
I just mean that. And to all of our viewers, I hope you've enjoyed today. I really look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks for our next episode of Salem Voices. Until then, Sarah, let's count to 3 and do it together. Salem
Yeah.
Strong, okay? 1, 2, 3, Salem Strong.
Salem strong.
Thanks.